Welcome in to episode 2 of the AL Recruiting Podcast. I'm your host, David Green, and I'm so thankful that you have joined with us today. We got a big show lined up. We got our Bigger Than Football segment. We have a breakdown of the Madison Bowl, game I attended, an overtime thriller. We'll be talking about the players that played in that game. I'm going to be looking ahead at 2025 players. If you don't know, those are freshmen who are already contributing on their high school team in the state of Alabama. We're going to look at a few of them. Also, we have a big interview with Pyron. He's the quarterback at Pinson Valley. He's going for his 4th state championship, but he dropped some big news this week, and we talked to him about his recruitment. And then lastly, we have an interview with Coach Scott Rials. He's the head coach of the Baldwin County Tigers. He had an interesting score, one I've never heard of. And also, he talks about the players on his team. So great show lined up today. Thanks for joining with us. But let's get started with our Bigger Than Football segment. Last week, Taylor Morton joined us on the show, and we kind of introduced ourselves. So it was our first podcast. And we talked about that there are things that are bigger than football. And it just really hit me that that's the way I want to start every episode of every show. We're going to start with a segment called Bigger Than Football. And as we shared, our relationship with Jesus Christ for Taylor and I is the thing that drives both of us. It's the thing that leads both of us. So every week we're going to be looking at something that we saw that we think is important, that just we want to communicate that there are things in life that are bigger than football. As I watched football over the weekend, I was able to see something that really stood out to me, and it was the tribute to Coach Bobby Baldwin. Coach Bobby Baldwin, he's a legendary coach at Florida State, and he passed away over the summer, or really just about a month ago. And the Florida State football team, the university as a whole, they honored him at the game against Notre Dame this weekend. And they talked about him, they honored him. But to me, the thing that really stood out is it kind of went viral. A lot of the videos did, was that the band played Amazing Grace for Bobby Baldwin as a tribute to him, as a tribute to the man that he was. And I just think about that the band could have played any song. They could have chosen any song, but they felt like that the song that defined him, the song that defined his life, was Amazing Grace. If you've ever read Bobby Baldwin's book, or you've ever read anything about him or heard anything about him, you know that his relationship with Jesus Christ was the thing that really drove him. It was first in his life. And I was able to hear Bobby Baldwin and catch up with Coach Mark Richt in an event this past summer. They surprised Coach Richt. And Coach Richt talked about that it was Coach Baldwin who led him to Jesus Christ. It was Coach Baldwin that led him to the saving grace and the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. And from that moment, Coach Richt's life was forever changed. And there's countless stories of how Coach Baldwin shared Jesus, how he reached out to players, how he helped players, how he helped players and their families. And I just sat there and saw the videos of the band playing at halftime. And I hope and pray that at the end of my life, they would say that the thing that defines David, the thing that defines my life, would not be that I knew about football, that I knew about recruiting. It wouldn't be that I was a minister. It would be that David lived the grace of Jesus Christ, and he lived it out in his life each and every day. And I pray that that's the legacy that we all are striving for. I pray that that's the thing that we're all living for. Because how we live our life and who we live it for is bigger than football. And it doesn't matter if you have every offer in the world. It doesn't matter if you're the greatest player ever. But if you don't know Jesus, nothing else really matters. Because him and his relationship and a relationship with him is bigger than football. And so for me, that was something that just really stood out over the weekend, that's bigger than football. But in the same game, I just want to share briefly, if you don't know the story, the quarterback for Florida State got hurt in the game, or his helmet got ripped off, and they subbed in a quarterback named McKenzie Milton. Now, you may be familiar with that name, but about 3 years ago, McKenzie Milton was the quarterback for UCF, and he suffered a devastating knee injury. And the doctors basically told him they don't even know if you're going to be able to walk or walk without pain, much less play football. But all the surgeries and everything that he went through, he was able to come back out on the field, and he really led Florida State down the field and got that game into overtime. I mean, he just played tremendous for Florida State down the stretch in the fourth quarter. And it was just a huge moment in the game, just watching this young man, all that he had been through, to come back and play on the field. I mean, they kept panning over to his parents, and his parents were, his mom specifically, she was crying, and it was just wonderful to watch. But after the game, McKenzie put this post out. He said, "God is real. Nobody has ever come back from an injury like this. Thousands of people praying for me. I'm not here without all the support, all the prayers. This is just a testimony. That's my belief, and why I think I was able to step back on the football field tonight." Look, he gets it. I think the reason that he understands and the reason he was able to play the way that he did in the fourth quarter, coming in against Notre Dame, tons of pressure, it's because he understands, man, there are things in life that are bigger than football. And I'm happy to be where I'm at. I might not have been able to walk. I might not have been able to run. I thought I was never going to get to play again. So getting to play is a privilege. And when he went out there and understand and has everything in his life in priority, he's able to go play the best that he possibly can. And so those are just two wonderful stories from the same game, but two wonderful things that I saw this week that are bigger than football. And my hope and prayer is that if you hear any segment of our podcast every week, listen to this first one. All the other stuff compared to the Lord and compared to relationship with the Lord, it doesn't really matter. As we look ahead in our next segment, we're going to be talking about the Madison Bowl with James Clemens and Bob Jones. So stay tuned as we break down that game and look at some of the players in that game. Well, welcome back, everyone. We're going to be looking at the game that I attended last week, the Madison Bowl. And it's the crosstown rivalry between Bob Jones and James Clemens. And man, what a game it was. What a wonderful game it was. It went to overtime. James Clemens was able to win 34-28. They kept Bob Jones out of the end zone on the very last play of the game, rushed the field. Fans were excited. And I just want to commend and say this to both coaching staffs at Bob Jones and James Clemens. Man, what a wonderful job they were doing. What a wonderful game. What wonderful sportsmanship and competition. And the level of competition on the field was so high. Players on both sides of the ball making plays. And it was just wonderful to be a fan and a spectator to watch as that game went on, but also off the field. Both of these coaches' staffs do a great job of helping their players get recruited, putting their names out there. They are doing wonderful, wonderful things to help. And if your kid plays for them, they're helping your kid get exposure and get noticed. And so I just wish both coaching staffs, both teams, the best as they continue this season. And just looking at this game. But again, as I said, James Clemens won the game 34-28 in overtime. And there were just huge plays during the game. But the two players that stood out, we're going to look at the offensive side of the ball first on both teams, and then we'll go to the defense. But on the offensive side of the ball, both quarterbacks played outstanding. They had wonderful games, and I'm going to look at some of the stats from that game. But they played outstanding. Rayshawn Hardy, he's the quarterback for Bob Jones High School. He's a junior. He's 6'2", 205 pounds. He had 407 all-purpose yards in the game. I felt like this was just a breakout performance for him. He had 148 rushing yards, 259 passing yards, 4 touchdowns. I mean, he scored every touchdown for his team. Now, he had 2 huge throws to his wide receiver, Quentin Hubbard, who is another 2023 guy. Hubbard has elite speed. He turned a screen pass into a 74-yard reception. He blew by a defensive back to catch an 84-yard pass. And he finished the night with 5 receptions and 200 yards. And Quentin is a guy that he is just a threat to house it every time he touches the football. And then on the other side of the ball, or on the other side of the field, James Clemens, their quarterback, Giovanni Lopez, he's a 2023 guy. So hopefully everybody stays healthy and we get this battle again next year, their senior year. But Gio, as they call him, he's 6'1", 215 pounds, another outstanding runner. But he has an incredible arm. And I think I may be wrong here, but I feel like he may throw the ball better on the run. He's left-handed, and he made a throw to his wide receiver, Tyreek Walker. And we'll talk about Tyreek in just a second, but he made a touchdown throw to Tyreek Walker that was just incredible. He's rolling out to his left. Again, he's left-handed. There's 2 defenders coming towards him, and he makes a throw to Tyreek Walker that is just absolutely incredible. And it was a touchdown catch, just dropped it right in the basket. And so, Gio is an outstanding quarterback. Rayshawn Hardy is an outstanding quarterback. Both of these guys are the type of guys that teams are looking for now, that can run with their legs, that are elusive, that are just game breaker type of guys that can do it all. They can run, they can throw. I expect both these guys to get a lot of attention as this season goes on, as they lead in their senior year. But as I said, Tyreek Walker, he's a wide receiver for James Clemens. And Tyreek, he is just a playmaker. He's 6 foot, he's 175 pounds. But I feel like when James Clemens needed a play through the air, Lopez would look to Walker to come up big. He had 7 catches for 98 yards and 1 touchdown. He had a 2-point conversion catch. He faced tough coverage all night, but he just was able to make play after play after play. Now, he's a senior, but he runs great routes. He can take the top off the defense. He has great hands. I feel like he's somebody that can contribute at D1 FCS or Group of 5 easily. And let me just say this about Tyreek and Gio. As warmups were ending, the last wide receiver on the field with his quarterback was Tyreek. I think that connection with your quarterback is important. So if you're a wide receiver right now, who is the person that you should be best friends with? It's your quarterback. Because if you want to get the ball in your hands, you need to be somebody that the quarterback trusts. You need to be the guy that, hey, that's my friend. That's who I'm going to look to distribute the ball. When it's a clutch situation, I know he's got my back. And I just feel like that's the connection that Tyreek and Gio have, is that he was just on the field, running routes, catching. It was just long passes, and he's just out there catching them. And that's the kind of connection you want. Now, another guy on the James Clemens offense that just really stood out to me was Dante Snodgrass. He's had big games earlier in the season, but he had another big game against Bob Jones. Let me pull up his stats here, but Dante, he's a running back. He's 5'8", he's 180 pounds. He had 80 yards on 13 carries, had 2 touchdowns in the Madison Bowl. But he also is able to contribute in the passing game, which I think is going to be a huge plus for him at the next level. He's a smaller back, but man, he's effective between the tackles as a smaller back. He explodes through the hole. He gets north and south. He doesn't waste any time. He doesn't dance. He just runs the rock like it's supposed to be ran. And I just enjoyed watching him play and carry the ball. But also on the offensive side of the ball, you can't get any of this done. You can't talk about all these skill guys without having somebody blocking for them. And you start, if you're going to talk about offensive line play, you start with James Clemens, Edgerrin Watson, Edge as they call him. He's got I think 12, 13 offers right now. Could have changed by the time we're filming this show or publishing out there, but 12 or 13 offers. He's a big time prospect. He's the right tackle for James Clemens, which is Gio's blind side because Gio's a left-handed quarterback. And man, he just gets the job done. He's great in pass pro. He does a great job when they try to run the football. A lot of their big plays come on the right side of the field. That's where they trust that send Dante up through there. Send Gio, when he runs the football, he carries the ball up through there. And so he really does a great job of kind of setting the edge or really just kind of controlling the edge and allowing James Clemens' offense to continue to move and to get down the field. But man, on the other side of the ball, I was looking and there's a kid that really stood out to me, Maddox Sunderman. Maddox Sunderman is an offensive lineman for Bob Jones that I think the sky is the limit for him. He's already into wrestling. We know college O-line coaches love guys that are wrestlers, and Maddox fits that bill. He is just, a great, great player. He does a great job. And he's right now, like I said, he's a 10th grader, but I feel like the sky's the limit for this young man. He's going to do a lot of great things. And I think he's going to be a big time prospect in the next few years as teams start to watch him, as he gets bigger, as he develops, as he continues to wrestle. But just offensive line play was outstanding in this game. But D-line play was good too. And we're about to talk about that in just a minute. But man, the offenses of both teams did an outstanding job. And I may not mention every player on offense, but again, there's players all over this field. There's players all over the field, and some of them just may not have made big plays that night, but they may make plays later on in the season that get them noticed, and people start to talk about them. Let's move to the defensive side of the ball in this particular game, and I wrote an article in Prep Red Zone Alabama. And you cannot start talking about defensive play in this game without talking about the safeties at James Clemens. And the first one I'm going to talk about is Jamal Mayers. He is 2023 safety for James Clemens. Now, he's just 5'10", 165 pounds. I asked him, but I'm telling you, this guy plays bigger than that. He made first team All-State as a sophomore in 7A last year, which is huge. And he really didn't have a lot of looks. There weren't a lot of balls thrown his way on Friday night because, he obviously already has a reputation for just being a ball hawk, a guy that has a nose for the football. But you think as a defensive back, well, if they're not going to throw my way, how can I contribute in the game? Well, man, I counted at least 5 huge tackles that he came up and he made solo tackles in the game. And I'm not talking just wrap up and just fall down. I'm talking come up, hit the player, flip them up in the air. And he is just an outstanding player and just an absolute headhunter as a safety. And I'm sitting here after watching him play, And I'm thinking, I'm probably watching the top DB or one of the top DBs in the state of Alabama for the 2023 class. And if you don't believe me, go watch him play. If you don't believe that, I don't know what you're watching. He is outstanding as a player. And I just think anybody, any coaching staff would be pleased to have him on the team. He's extremely underrated. And I just encourage you, go watch him play and the way he hits. I mean, he came up and made a play against Rashawn Hardy, who was outstanding in this game, 407 all-purpose yards. He came up and made a play against Rashawn in overtime that just set the tone for James Clemens' defense in overtime. He just he just made a play on him, stopped him, and they were solo tackles. Nobody's really helping him. He made a solo tackle on this one. It's just outstanding to watch. And then the other safety at James Clemens, he's a senior, is Cameron Barnett. Man, what a game he had. He had a pick six. He forced a fumble. He came up and made huge tackles. And he's a big guy. Let me pull up his numbers real quick. Cameron Barnett, he's 6 foot, 180 pounds. And I think he's a guy that he keeps having performances like that. That's going to put him on the radar of a lot of colleges, a lot of teams, and people are going to see him. But, I think that James Clemens has great defensive line play. Darren Burridge, he's a big guy. They got a couple other guys in the middle that play well. Andrew Millar is another guy that plays really, really aggressive. And there's some young guys that I was watching, not going to mention them yet, but man, if they develop, they're going to be really, really good. And people are going to take notice of who they are. They're athletic, they're fast, they're good. And so I just say, there's a lot of talent on that James Clemens defense. And I think that that's one of the things that's going to help them as they continue region play, as they get into the playoffs to be able to make a run. Is it's going to take these guys coming together on defense to really, help them in the future. But on the other side of the field, Bob Jones has some dudes on defense as well. And really, to me, the guy that just seems to set the tone is Cedric Jackson. I mean, he's a defensive lineman, violent hands, big man in the middle. And he's their tackle. And I wrote an article for Prep Red Zone Alabama that said, let me pull him up. He is 6'3", 320 pounds. He has a high motor, had an impact in this game. He was able to push the pocket on passing plays, really affect Gio at times, made him have to get out of the pocket, but he's also an effective run stopper. And man, James Clemens used the submarine tactic on him all night. He was able to shed that, get off of that a lot. I think he could be play 0, 1, or 2 technique in college. But man, he played outstanding in this game. It's just like every time I was looking up, there's 99 in the backfield. Every time I was looking, there's 99 pushing the pocket or making a play against a running back or helping out the defense. And so he was a guy that I just felt like was a tone setter for that defense. But, there's some other guys on that field that really stood out to me when I look at the linebackers at Bob Jones. Man, they will just come up and hit you. I loved watching Jaden Edwards play. Some other guys, Jonathan Monroe, man, I think the sky's the limit for him if he continues to develop. Rowan Jones, I think he had like 12, 13, 14 tackles in the game. Just seemed like every time I looked up, he's making tackle after tackle. And there's just guys everywhere on the field making plays for Bob Jones. Trying to make sure if there was anybody else I wanted to highlight in this one. But yeah, I mean, there's players everywhere. There's players on this field. Kosi Scarebrook, he's another guy, defensive back, had a big game for Bob Jones. And looking at him, he's 6'2", 180 pounds as a defensive back, 8 tackles, 3 pass breakups. He had a block kick. But to me, his size is what is appealing as a recruit. I think colleges are going to love this guy because he has great size, great range, great speed. But I mean, let me just say this. If I didn't talk about you and you're disappointed, I understand as a player. But if I'm a college coaching staff right now, and if I'm watching this, if I'm a recruiting coordinator, I'm sending somebody to James Clemens and Bob Jones. I'm going to send somebody to their practice. I'm going to send somebody to their games, and I'm going to watch these guys play, because there are guys on this field, when you go watch them play, that can contribute at all levels, and they're not being recruited right now. And you can find players. I would be building relationships with both of these coaching staffs, because both of these teams could be a pipeline for your school if you start to build the relationships with them. And I'm talking D3, D2, NAIA, D1 FCS, D1 FBS. There are guys that can contribute, and that right now that are middle schoolers that are going to be contributors, that if you'll build those relationships, you'll have a pipeline there. There's players all over the field, and I would be there building relationships with them. There's one player on Bob Jones's team that we didn't talk about. We're going to talk about in our next segment when we look at 2025 players, freshmen, that are already contributing on their team in the state of Alabama. Stay tuned as we talk about that. Welcome back to the show. We're going to be looking at some 2025 players that are contributors for their team in the state of Alabama this year. And I just think if a kid is a freshman and he's contributing on his high school football team, what an accomplishment, what a player he is. And one guy that I think really stood out to me, we just talked about the Madison Bowl, but as I said, there's a guy on Bob Jones that I wanted to talk about in this particular segment, because he is a freshman that is already starting for Bob Jones. He's got some critical roles for the Patriots. He's a slot wide receiver. He's a punt returner. He's a kick returner. It's Malachi Foster. Malachi Foster, watching him, and he got the ball, made some catches. I mean, he made some mistakes. That's what, freshmen just do at times. But, I mean, he made plays, and he is quick. He is elusive. He is fast. And I sat there, and I know that for some of you, this is going to be high praise to hear this, but I sat there, and as I watched him play, I couldn't help but think of Tyrone Prothro. I saw Prothro when he was a freshman, and Malachi Foster reminds me of him. I'm not ready to say he's the next Prothro, but he reminds me of him. I mean, he's elusive, he's fast, he's already contributing as a freshman. And now here's the difference. Prothro played at Cleburne County, and I'm not knocking the teams that Cleburne County plays against, but it's just a different level when he was playing 4A football compared to 7A football. And I think if Foster was on a team like a 4A team, I mean, he would probably be putting up numbers like Prothro was putting up at Cleburne County. And so you got a guy that is just already has assumed some big roles and filled big roles for Bob Jones. And he's doing as a freshman at the 7A level. And I just think he's going to be a guy in 3 years from now we're all going to be talking about, and all the recruiting services are going to be talking about him in the future. But some other guys, I kind of heard about him this summer. He's a defensive end, outside linebacker, kind of that tweener that has been made popular, that can rush the edge, but also has to do coverage. But Grayshawn Swain, he's from Anniston High School. As a freshman, he's 6'3", 220 pounds. And I saw some of his videos from camp this summer where he was doing some rush drills and just beating linemen that were much older than him. He's fast. He's quick off the ball. He's got a great get off. And I messaged Dex Preps asking about him. Said, hey, is he legit? And he was like, look, if he continues to develop, the sky's the limit for him. And so a lot of these guys are guys that we see right now that have tons of potential. They just have to keep developing. But man, he already has the frame 6'3", 220. He's going to get bigger. And he's already contributing for Aniston in a huge way. I posted the message. I was looking for 2025 guys for this segment. I had a coach message me from American Christian Academy. He said, look, wide receiver Eric Hines is a guy that will no doubt be a top prospect in 2025. I mean, he's 6'3", he's 190 pounds as a freshman, and he has a 35.5-inch vertical already. Look, when a coach messages you and says, no doubt this guy's going to be a prospect, you take it serious. You got to go with that, because these are guys that are with them each and every day. And the coaches of American Christian Academy, they've got dudes. And so they know if this guy's already doing this as a player, they know he's ready to go. Another guy that he sent me a message, I watched his film, Ryan Williams of Saraland High School, again, contributing at a huge school, 6A program. Great program, great football program. Ryan Williams, Saraland High School. He's 6'1", 160 pounds. Man, he is a smooth runner. I love watching this kid run the football once he makes the catch. He is unbelievable to watch. I just encourage you, go watch his huddle film. Check it out. Google that and watch him play. Great runner. Some quarterbacks that are already contributing. Tyler Pierce, he's a quarterback for Boaz, playing at the 5A level. Landon Jones, he's a starting quarterback for Gulf Shores at the 6A level. Both these guys, I watched some of their film. They can spin it. They can play. They're good players. And all the other positions, let me just say this, playing quarterback as a freshman in high school, leading your program, that's just an unbelievable accomplishment to me. It's so rare. I kind of think back to some guys I watched play as freshmen. I saw Bo Nix play for Scottsboro when he was playing for Scottsboro as a freshman, and watching him play, that was impressive. And now you see some guys like this, and not saying that they're the next Bo Nix. That's not what I'm trying to communicate. But what I am saying is that it just takes an extreme amount of, just development, knowing how to handle yourself and carry yourself. Just maturity is through the roof for these young men to be able to do this at this level, because there's good football played in the state of Alabama. All across the state, there's good football played. And so it just takes a lot for them to be able to do that and step up and fill that role. Another guy that everybody's saying to watch out for is KJ Lacey at Daphne. He's going to be one for us to kind of keep our eye on. And then his Coach Busby from Helena, messaged me and said, hey, another guy, 2025 guy, JT Alvis. He's one that we need to be watching out for. I know he made a big interception. I think last week he had a big interception in the game. He's a defensive back. He's somebody that we need to keep on our radar and be watching out for. And so some of you college coaches, you want to get an early start building an early list. Here you go. Go back, write those names down, and be listening to them. But up next, on our next segment, we're going to be talking to a guy who, as a freshman, led his team to a state championship. And I'm talking about Zach Pyron, and he led Fife to a state championship as a freshman. He led them to a state championship as a sophomore. He transferred to Pinson Valley and won a state championship as a junior. He's going for his 4th state championship this year. But we talked to him about that, his team. But we also talked to him about his big news this week where he decommitted from Baylor. And we wanted to give him the opportunity to use this platform to talk about his recruitment. So stay tuned, listen to that interview. And then following him, we have an interview with Coach Scott Rials from Baldwin County High School. So stay tuned for those two big interviews. Well, welcome back to the AL Recruiting Podcast. We are excited tonight to be joined by Pinson Valley quarterback Zach Pyron. And he has, he's been in the news in Alabama for years now. Zach, you've got one of the most unique stories in our state. You're going for one of the most unique things. I don't know if it's ever been done. You've won 2 state championships at Fife. You won 1 at Pinson Valley last year as a junior. Now you're going for state championship number 4, and you got a good start to that, starting region play 1-0 against Gardendale. Tell us about your team this season, what your goals are, and what's the outlook.
Absolutely. We have a really good team this year, we feel. We started off slow against Hewitt. Hewitt was a really good team. I expect them to go far. I got some good friends at Hewitt. I know that they work hard for it. And then we came back strong. We beat a really good Gardendale team Friday. We were really working hard for them. We knew they were going to come out and be physical and be tough, and we felt that we played really good. But our thing is we could always play better. Our biggest thing this year is not being satisfied. We need to finish more drives. We felt we left too many points on the board. And I think that's the biggest thing about our team that's going to make it special this year is we're not really content with anything. We feel that if we put 60 points up, we need to put 70 up, so that's something special about this team is we're always working to be better.
Right, man. Well, I think, and look, I'm cheering for you. We're pulling for you. Everybody else in your class may not be in your classification. They may be trying to knock you guys off, but I think going for 4 state championships in a row is a unique thing. And we're definitely pulling for you to do well and have a shot at being able to do that. And it takes a special player to do that. It takes a special person that's a freshman to be able to do that, especially when you were at Fife and then to move to Pinson Valley and do that. But man, we got you on tonight. We brought you on this week because you dropped some big news this week. You've been committed to Baylor for a while, and then you posted on social media that you had decommitted from Baylor. And we just, instead of speculating about what's going on, we just wanted to ask you what's happening, what's going on with that, and what's going on with your recruitment right now.
Yes, sir. There's been a lot going on with just college football lately here, and with some news of the Big 12 and stuff. And me and my family felt best that with some stuff that we have going on, that one with distance was something that we weren't knowing like if we were ready for something like that. So that's something we had to take a step back and look at. Not saying that was the ultimate factor, but then also the uncertainty of the Big 12 and things that could happen, and then a few other schools reached out to me, and we felt that the best would be for me is to decommit.
Okay. Well, immediately when you did decommit, I think that morning or just right after following, you were offered by Vanderbilt and Arkansas immediately, 2 SEC teams. I don't know, did you know they were going to offer, or was that something that they just saw that and they responded to your news?
I knew they were going to offer. They've been talking to me for a while. They've been talking about me through Coach Shade for a while. So I knew that was something that was coming here soon. I think they're just waiting for it. Those are really 2 awesome programs. I think Vanderbilt, academically wise, you can't beat them. And Arkansas, they're a really tough football team. And I think both of them are on the rise, and they're building something special, and they're just looking for some of those guys to come in and turn the program around.
Yeah, for sure. Coach Pittman, I know he's really created a lot of hype on social media. And not only that, with just the way that they're playing and the style of play, I think it's got the fan base excited there. Let me ask you this: outside of those 2 teams, since you made that announcement, is there anybody else that you would like to say that you're hearing from the most, or were those 2 teams kind of the front runners and who you're hearing from?
Those two teams were the teams that came out and offered me, but I've been hearing from UCLA, Arizona State, Northwestern. I'm trying not to leave anybody out. I know Syracuse was on the phone with my father today, so those are some of the teams, and there's a few other teams that have followed me on Twitter that I'm really trying to get in contact with, which I think will happen here soon.
Okay. Well, man, that is great news. And look, that's the thing is we want this platform to allow athletes to be able to say, hey, this is what's going on. I don't want to
Yes,
be a
sir.
guy that speculates. Well,
Right.
this is what Zach's thinking. I mean, I don't know you. You don't know me except for through social media. And so I was like, hey, let's just reach out to Zach and see if we can get him on and just allow him to tell his side of the story.
Yes, sir. We appreciate that.
Yeah. And, ultimately, look, and I said this last week on the podcast, and I'll say it now, whoever gets you is getting a winner. For me, when I'm looking at numbers, I mean, I don't know if I know coaches, they look at measurables, they look at stats, but man, they're getting a guy that's already won 3 state championships, going for a 4th one. I think that's a big deal. To me, when I look at you and even watching your film and what you do, I mean, you've played in big stages, and I don't think any stage in college is going to be too big for you either. So,
Right. Yes, sir. And that's something I was blessed with talking about the big stages, being a part of the Elite 11 this summer. I actually got to talk with Dak Prescott. We got to have a little meeting with him, and that was I have about 3 or 4 pages worth of notes just on what he would say, and he said something that I really took to heart. And he said, "Pressure is privilege," and
mm-hmm.
that is something that you can go through my Twitter and you can see me. I have a tweet on there, and it's pressure is privilege, and I think that's something a lot of people get wrapped up in. It's like it's such a big moment, it's such a big stage, but if you really take a step back and be like, you're blessed to be having pressure on you because it means you're doing something good and you're in a position where you have something at stake and you're able to accomplish something big.
Yeah. Well, and I'll just say this, and I know, and I want you to be able to answer this question for everyone. There's always speculation that if somebody decommits, that there's a commitment on the horizon. And I just want you to say, and be allowed to say on a public forum where I know coaches are going to watch this podcast and listen to it. We'll just ask you the question: is your recruitment 100% open and you are wide open looking for anything?
Yes, sir. It's 100% open. I'd like to get on campus on some campuses first. I still have 4 officials that I'm allowed to take. I don't know if they do officials during the fall as much as they do in the off season, especially with me being a early enrollee and I'm trying to sign with the early signing period. But I still have 4 officials to take, and I do plan on being on campus for some games. So I don't see it unless it's just I go to on campus and I just fall in love with school and everything. But I don't see it happening anytime soon. I'd like to get on campus before I did something first.
Awesome. Well, so just to be really clear, you got 4 officials left. You're an early enrollee. You want to sign on the December signing period, and you're wanting to get on campus.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, that's the thing, man. We just wanted you to be able to come on here and tell your side of the story. But you got who do you guys have this week coming up?
We have Minor. It's another region game. Minor, they're a really tough team. We've been breaking down their film. They're extremely athletic, so it's will be another fun game.
Yeah, I actually I posted a few weeks ago about 2 of their defenders, two guys they have on their defense that are tough, good players,
absolutely,
potential D1 guys, and so I think it's going to be a fun matchup, be fun to watch, and we'll be watching you guys all season. But Zach, I just wanted to say, man, you're welcome to come on here anytime.
Yes, sir.
If you ever need to set the story straight for what's going on, come on here. We'll get you on. We'll set the story straight of what's going on with your recruitment. But man, we were so glad to hear from you. So glad to have you on. And we wish you nothing but the best this season as you go for a fourth state championship.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me on tonight. It was an honor.
Well, guys, thank you so much for continuing to listen to the AL Recruiting Podcast. Stay tuned. Up next, we have an interview with Coach Rials from Baldwin County, as they have one of the most unique scores that I've ever heard of. But thanks again for listening. Stay tuned. Well, welcome back into our final segment of the AL Recruiting Podcast. We are so thankful today to be joined by the Baldwin County Tigers head coach, Coach Scott Rials. Coach, thanks so much for joining us, and congrats for starting the season 2-0.
Thank you for having us, David. We're excited, and no matter how you get to 2-0, it's a great feeling. I've been on the other side of that ledger before.
Yep. Well, that's the one thing you just said. No matter how you get to 2-0, we're going to talk about that. You guys, I know it goes back to all the way to 1989, is what you were telling me pre-show, but you had a 9-game losing streak to Blunt. And I read this week, I said, there was a quote. It said, the only fun thing about a losing streak is ending it. And you guys were able to end that by beating Blunt High School 2-0, and probably one of the most interesting scores that you'll have in 2021. Tell us a little bit about that game and how that played out for you guys.
Well, one thing, the field is not that great, so that kind of could have played into some of the 0-0. It was kind of rough, and but anyway, it just was one of those games. We had 2 touchdowns called back, and Blunt actually had 1. So there was some goal line crossing. There was just some penalties that wound up, taking it off. So that being said, it just, every game kind of takes on a presence of its own. You get in those shootouts some weeks, you don't realize that's going to happen. You get in a tight defensive game some weeks, you don't really realize that's going to happen until you get in that game. And then sometimes it sort of alters your plan a little bit. You're like, okay, we got to make sure we take care of the football. It's okay to punt if we need to. Our defense is playing great. We can put the game in their hands. So sometimes a lot of things play into that, but where if the game had been, if anybody had ever scored and it started going, it could have been, totally opposite. It's just one of those things. As the game wore on and we saw this is fixing to be a defensive battle, then we, just said, well, we got to just hunker down on defense, not give up anything, take care of the football on offense. If we had to punt, that's not the worst thing, because right now we're doing a good job from the defensive side.
Yeah, it's one of those things where when you see the score and you're just seeing the end number, and
Right.
it's hard to, a lot of times on social media or on the news, you see a score and you think, how in the world did that happen? But if you've ever played in those games or coached in those games, you understand, just like what you said, sometimes it affects your play calling. You may get to the third quarter and think, well, their offense isn't playing great, ours isn't playing great, the field conditions are tough. And so it does kind of affect how you call the game.
Definitely. And that, and we had some turnovers, which we got some turnovers too, You know how it is when you have turnovers, you say we make a mistake. When they have a turnover, you say we force those turnovers. So anyway, we had 3 turnovers and they had 3 turnovers.
Yeah.
Or maybe 4. But anyway, we just, had some struggles there earlier in the game offensively. And really we moved the ball decent. I know our running back, Jay Baldwin, he had over 80 yards. Our rushing, our quarterback had probably 80 or more rushing, another 100 we threw for, a little over 100. It's not great stats, but we could move the ball. It's like just nobody could quite break the ice and cross the goal line.
Well, like I was telling you pre-show, I've been involved in those games, and it just seems like a fight. And but the one thing that I think is important that we all talk about is you're still 2-0, and you're 1-0 in region play, and it doesn't matter if it's by 50 points or 2 points. You still are only 1-0, and that's all you can be in this moment.
Correct. We talked about that too with our team. It actually to pitch a shutout, so to speak, it takes everybody on the whole team, because so many games you see scores by the defense, which we had 2 points scored by our defense, by the kicking game, a punt return, kickoff return, or something happens crazy. And sometimes your offense, throws a pick or fumbles and the other team scores. So to have shutouts and us have been able to get 2 in a row, it takes a whole team effort. So no matter how much you score, it takes a team effort to put that shutout together.
Right. And that's what I was at a game this week, and it was a rivalry game, But I think the message that the coaches are trying to send is, yeah, great, enjoy winning a rivalry game, but ultimately you're still 1-0. You're 1-0 in region play, and you got to continue that that momentum that you got.
Correct. And like I say, for us to be 1-0 in this region, it doesn't matter which one of those other 7 teams you beat, they're all good. So just trying to win the game, if it's by 1 point, 2 points, 2-0, 49-48, or whatever the score is, as you said, a win's a win, and it keeps you, on track to get in the playoffs.
Yep. And you guys are headed to Saraland this week, right?
Yes, sir. They that's another big game. And I mean, really, really good team. They're big, they're physical, they're well coached. They got one of the top receivers in the state, some of the top running back, quarterback's good. I mean, defense, they're really sound.
Mm-hmm.
They got a good kicking game. There's really nothing that they're weak in. I know they've got a couple losses, but to some really, really sound teams too. So we're going to have our work cut out for us, no doubt.
Yeah, and you look across the state, there's really not many regions tougher than the one you guys play in. That's for sure.
Correct. We actually, everybody down here, and even some people across the state, call this the SEC West 6A Region 1, because there's really, there are no cupcakes or anything in this region. I mean, you better be able to play every week, or you're gonna get it handed to you. So you got
That's right.
You got to be ready to roll.
Well, one thing I want to ask you about is just tell us about some guys on your team. I know we have a lot of coaches that follow us, college coaches, they listen to us. And so just from your mouth, talking to recruiters that may be watching this, who are some guys they ought to be looking out for, maybe some they hadn't even heard of yet?
Right. Well, our first guy up is Ty Mims, who is playing quarterback for us, but he's really a slot receiver, return type guy. He's kind of smallish, but we moved into quarterback this year, and he's actually already committed to Southern Miss. He's got several other offers. I know Western Kentucky and some others, but anyway, he's already committed to Southern Miss, and he's a really outstanding player. He may be one of the best skill guys in the whole state. I mean, he can really run, does a lot of good things with the ball in his hands. And anyway, and then we got 2 defensive guys that have tons of interest, but not a lot of really big time offers. One of them is our linebacker, Darius Woodard. He's a senior, and he really good player. He kind of anchors our defensive side. He plays downhill. He can get to the ball. He just a really solid player. You got to have some good players on that defense, shut out anybody. It doesn't matter who you play. And then Antonio Williams is a defensive end for us. He's about 6'4", 220. He's kind of lean. He plays basketball too, so that kind of keeps him in the offseason from really getting on a lot of weight. But he's got a great frame. In fact, we've sent a lot of videos out on him to different schools and colleges, and they really like him. He's got a wingspan that's 7'1". He's like long.
Wow.
Wow. Really, really good player. He's a good rush type end. He can play the run too, but he's one of those guys that, most schools really covet. Most colleges really want that guy that can rush and is long and can do some good things, and with a great frame. Those 2 guys are really standout players for us. And then we got some younger guys. We got a sophomore that plays actually left tackle for us. He started every game last year as a true freshman. His name is Dalen Martin, and he's getting a lot of interest. He's a big kid, weighs about 280, maybe close to 300, but anyway, he's about 6'3" and long, and he's a really good player as a sophomore. So he's still a couple years, out, but really dynamic player, good run blocker, good pass blocker. So, those are some of our standout guys that, if not already got offers and have recruits after them, they will, soon.
Yeah, and should. That's the thing, is that I can promote players, but hearing it from a coach is so meaningful, especially guys watching this. And I'll just say this: I've watched film on a lot of teams in your region, and if coaches are watching this segment, just go stand on the sideline of any teams in that region on a Friday night, and you're going to see some players that can contribute at the collegiate level.
Yeah, no doubt. I got a safety that actually intercepted 3 passes this week. He's up for the player of the week across the state and all that. His name is DJ Jackson. He's a sophomore. He's a really dynamic player too. I mean, he can run, he'll hit. Just a really, good, strong, solid player that has really made a difference. He started for us last year. Our season's a lot better because last year we only had 7 seniors, so we got most of our kids back.
Wow.
And that's helped us tremendously to have a year under our belt, and we only got to play 7 games last year, so that kind of hurt us. We went 3-4 in those 7 games, and but this year we have more depth and we got more experience. So, it's really helped us to have a good off season together.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this. I've never heard of Baldwin County not having players, and you guys are this 2021 team seems to carry the same weight as having players that play for you. And I'm excited to see how you guys finish this season out as it continues on. Yeah.
Same here. We one thing last year we really struggled with, and it's no blame to COVID or anything, but we had trouble getting kids here. We had all that. Well, we had Monday practice on Labor Day from 9 to 12 practice, workouts, meetings and all that. And literally we've got 74 kids on our roster. We had 71 here. One is out for COVID, a younger guy. He actually came back today. And then we had another guy that's injured was out. And then another guy had actually gone out of town. So we, just having your players here, I'm telling you, is important. And that's not just for us, that's for all schools. And if you have injuries, sickness and all that, I mean, it can wreck your season fast. And that's kind of what happened to us last year. But so far, knock on wood, we've been blessed this year with our guys here.
Well, Coach, I appreciate you taking time to join with us today. We'll be, we believe in the power of prayer. Like I said in our first episode, we're 2 guys that love Jesus that host this show. And so we hope that you guys have a great and safe season. Good luck this week as you guys travel to Saraland. Hopefully you'll get to 3-0 as you play a tough Saraland team. But thank you so much for being with us today and taking time with us today, Coach.
Appreciate you for having us. It's been an honor and a pleasure. Anytime you want us back, just give me a call. Thank you.
All righty. Well, everybody, thank you so much for listening today. Tune in next week as we bring in more stories and more players from the state of Alabama as we talk recruiting. But thank you so much, everyone, for listening to our podcast today. Have a great day and God bless.